Have you ever walked into a room and felt it? The loudest voices fighting to be heard, opinions colliding, egos competing. And then there's that one person, quiet, calm, still. They're not rushing to speak. They're not scrambling to prove a point. They're not reacting to every comment thrown their way. They're watching. And here's the part most people completely misunderstand. Silence is not insecurity. It's not weakness. And it's definitely not ignorance. It's control. While others are driven by impulse, quiet minds are driven by awareness. They're studying tone, body language, inconsistencies, emotional shifts. They're noticing who interrupts, who seeks validation, who performs confidence instead of embodying it. They don't react instantly because they don't need to. Reaction is emotional. Observation is strategic. And in a world addicted to noise, instant replies, and constant validation, the person who can pause, who can regulate, who can choose when and how to respond, holds a different kind of power. Today, we're diving into the hidden psychology of quiet minds. What's really happening beneath the silence? Why observers often understand more than they reveal? And why underestimating them might be the biggest mistake in the room? Let's begin. In a culture built on instant replies, hot takes, and rapid-fire opinions, silence feels almost suspicious. If someone doesn't respond right away, we get uncomfortable. We assume something must be wrong. They're shy. They're awkward. They don't have anything smart to say. They lack confidence. But psychology tells a very different story. Research on cognitive processing shows that some individuals naturally take in more environmental data before responding. They don't just hear words, they analyze delivery. They don't just see behavior, they interpret patterns. Quiet minds tend to engage in deeper processing. Instead of reacting emotionally, they scan the room. They notice subtle tone shifts. They catch micro-expressions that flash for half a second. They pay attention to word choice. They observe power dynamics, who dominates, who defers, who seeks approval. While others rush to defend themselves or prove a point, they're gathering information, and information is leverage. That pause you see, it's not emptiness, it's not confusion, it's not weakness, it's calculation. They're asking themselves, what's really being said here? What's the intention behind those words? Is a response even necessary? And if so, what response creates the best outcome? That level of internal filtering requires emotional control and mental discipline. It's easier to react. It takes strength to wait. In many cases, the quiet person isn't slow. They're strategic. Because once you speak, you reveal your position. But when you stay silent, you keep observing everyone else's. And the person who understands the room usually has the most power in it. When you react instantly, you're operating from emotion. When you observe, you're operating from strategy. That difference changes everything. Silent people understand a powerful psychological truth. Emotion narrows perception. When you're triggered, defensive, or eager to win, your brain shifts into reaction mode. You focus on protecting your ego, not understanding the full picture. Observers don't rush into that trap. Instead of jumping into arguments, they step back and study patterns. They notice who constantly interrupts others to feel important. They notice who looks around the room after making a joke, searching for approval. They notice who suddenly changes their tone when someone higher status walks in. They notice who performs confidence loudly, but leaks insecurity in subtle ways. And here's the truth most people overlook. People reveal who they are when they believe no one is truly watching. Observers are always watching. That's why quiet individuals often form incredibly accurate assessments of others. It's not intuition alone, it's accumulated data. They don't guess about character. They don't rely on first impressions. They gather evidence. And over time, patterns don't lie. There's a core psychological skill that separates reactive people from powerful ones. It's called emotional regulation. Emotional regulation is the ability to feel everything: anger, frustration, embarrassment, excitement, without letting those emotions control your behavior. And this is where quiet individuals often stand out. They're not emotionless. They're not cold. They're not detached. They feel deeply, but they don't immediately externalize what they feel. Because the moment you react impulsively, raise your voice, fire back with sarcasm, send that heated text, you hand control of your emotional state to someone else. You're saying, without realizing it, "You can move me." Observers don't surrender control that easily. Instead of saying, "You made me mad," their internal dialogue sounds more like, "Interesting. That triggered me. Why?" That pause creates awareness. Awareness creates choice, and choice creates power. That small mental shift from blame to self-examination is emotional intelligence in action. And emotional intelligence is a quiet form of dominance. Not loud, not aggressive, but steady, grounded, and unshakable. In a world full of emotional reactions, the person who stays centered holds the real power. Here's something most people overlook. When someone reacts loudly, they dominate the air. They fill every gap with words, energy, and emotion. But when someone stays silent, they do the opposite. They create space. And psychological space is powerful. Because silence makes people uncomfortable. Humans are wired to interpret silence as tension. We rush to fill it. We explain more than necessary. We justify ourselves. We start talking just to reduce the awkwardness. So when a quiet person doesn't respond immediately, watch what happens. Others begin over-explaining. They start revealing motives. They add unnecessary details. They expose insecurities without realizing it. Silence becomes a mirror, and mirrors don't attack. They reflect. When there's no interruption, no emotional reaction, no immediate feedback, people end up confronting their own words. They hear themselves more clearly. They reveal more than they intended. That's not manipulation, it's restraint. The quiet person isn't playing games. They're simply refusing to react on impulse. They're allowing space to do what space naturally does: uncover truth. And in that space, character becomes visible. Most reactions aren't about the situation, they're about ego. We react because we want to be understood. We react because we want to win. We react because we want approval. We react because we want control. And when any of those feel threatened, we speak faster, louder, sharper. But quiet individuals often step outside that cycle. They don't feel the urge to correct every misunderstanding. They don't chase the need to defend every accusation. They don't try to prove their intelligence in every room they enter. Why? Because their self-worth isn't hanging on other people's opinions. It isn't built on applause. It isn't built on agreement. It isn't built on instant validation. It's built internally, and internal validation creates emotional stability. When you know who you are, you don't feel pressured to perform it. When you're secure in your value, you don't need to argue for it. That's why provocation doesn't work as easily on them. If someone doubts them, they don't panic. If someone misunderstands them, they don't spiral. Because when you no longer need approval, you stop reacting to everything that threatens it. And that kind of grounded confidence is hard to shake. Silent people aren't afraid to speak. They're selective. There's a difference. They understand something most people overlook. Timing shapes impact. The same sentence said at the wrong moment gets ignored. Said at the right moment, it shifts the entire room. So they wait. They observe the flow of conversation. They listen to what's already been said. They identify what's missing. And while others compete to be heard first, they position themselves to be heard best. Because when you observe long enough, you learn the rhythm of people. You sense when emotions are high and logic is low. You recognize when the room is defensive versus receptive. Then, when they finally speak, it lands. Not because it's louder, not because it's aggressive, but because it's precise. It addresses the real issue. It cuts through the noise. It adds clarity instead of chaos. That's why in meetings, classrooms, and social settings, the quiet person who rarely talks often delivers the most memorable insight. Not because they talk more, but because they talk after they understand. And understanding gives words weight. We live in a culture that rewards visibility. The loudest voice in the room is often mistaken for the strongest. Quick responses are confused with intelligence. Dominant personalities are labeled as leaders. But depth doesn't advertise itself. It doesn't interrupt. It doesn't compete for attention. It doesn't perform for applause. So observers often get misunderstood. They're called too quiet, too reserved, too distant. But what people label as distance is often discernment. They're not disconnected from others. They're selective about access. They don't open up instantly because they're evaluating character. They're watching consistency. They're measuring whether words align with actions. For them, trust isn't automatic. It's earned. And in a world where oversharing is normal and instant closeness is expected, that patience can feel unusual. But being selective isn't cold. It's careful. Quiet individuals understand that once you give people access to your thoughts, your vulnerabilities, your energy, you can't take that back. So they move slowly. Not because they lack depth, but because they value it. Here's the shift. Silence isn't emptiness, it's awareness. It's presence without performance. It's control without force. It's strength without noise. Quiet people don't react instantly because they're not owned by the moment. They're not pulled by every opinion, every provocation, every emotional spike in the room. They pause, they observe, they analyze, they regulate, and then, if necessary, they choose. That word matters. Choose. Most people don't choose their reactions. They discharge them. They let their emotions fire outward and call it authenticity. But unfiltered emotion isn't power. It's exposure. Real power is measured response. It's the ability to feel anger without becoming aggressive, to feel insulted without becoming defensive, to feel challenged without needing to dominate. In a world addicted to noise, constant updates, instant replies, viral outrage, loud opinions, the person who can remain grounded becomes rare, and rarity commands attention. Think about it. Who feels more stable in a tense situation? The person raising their voice, or the one sitting calmly, listening? Who seems more confident? The one scrambling to prove themselves, or the one who speaks only when it matters? Silence creates gravity. When you don't chase attention, attention shifts toward you. When you don't react impulsively, people start wondering what you're thinking. When you don't reveal everything, your words carry more weight when they finally arrive. That's the quiet advantage. It's not about being passive. It's not about avoiding conflict. It's not about shrinking yourself. It's about self-mastery. Because the truth is, anyone can react. It takes discipline to observe. It takes strength to regulate. It takes confidence to remain still when everyone else is trying to be seen. And here's something even deeper. When you stop reacting to everything, you start choosing what deserves your energy. Not every comment deserves a reply. Not every insult deserves a defense. Not every misunderstanding deserves correction. Sometimes the strongest move in the room is restraint. Sometimes the strongest statement is composure. So the next time someone mistakes your silence for weakness, let them. Underestimation is an advantage. While they're performing, you're perceiving. While they're talking, you're learning. While they're reacting, you're understanding the bigger picture. And understanding is power, because when you truly understand a room, the dynamics, the insecurities, the motivations, you don't need to dominate it. You influence it. Quietly, strategically, intentionally. So ask yourself, are you reacting out of impulse or responding from awareness? Are you chasing validation or building internal stability? Are you filling every silence or learning to use it? The loudest presence isn't always the strongest one. Sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one who doesn't need the room to validate them at all. If this resonated with you, subscribe for more psychology-backed insights on power, confidence, and human behavior. And tell me in the comments, are you the reactor or the observer?